Guys, Attorney Jesse Arana here. Today we're going to be talking about how a police officer conducts a DUI investigation. As a former criminal prosecutor, I used to do ride-alongs and receive different training on how to prosecute DUI cases. During my ride-alongs, I did them with different police agencies, including CHP, and would witness firsthand a police officer do a DUI investigation. As a current criminal defense attorney, I've actually received different types of trainings and have been certified pursuant to the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration standards to do a DUI investigation using what's called standardized field sobriety tests. That's this big book right here. This is a class and training that police officers receive as well in learning how to do a DUI investigation using standardized field sobriety tests. So we're going to be talking about that today. A DUI investigation is actually broken down into 3 stages. It is called vehicle in motion, contact with the driver, and pre-arrest screening. Now there's another episode on my YouTube channel that explains what you should do if ever the subject of a DUI investigation. So go ahead and check that out. I'll be talking about your constitutional rights and how you can invoke your constitutional rights to protect yourself in a DUI investigation. Today we're just going to be talking about the stages. So let's talk about each of those stages. The first stage is called vehicle in motion, and each stage always has a question. The question in the first stage is, am I going to pull this person over? What the officer is going to be doing while following you in your car is trying to see if there's any type of erratic driving, any type of suspicious driving. This includes your left tire touching the white line or crossing the line, or any of your tires, in fact, crossing any of the white lines or crossing into the other lane. This also includes driving too slow. This also includes speeding. In California, there are so many reasons why an officer can be justified to pull you over. So, the officer, while following you, is going to pick one of these many reasons and initiate a traffic stop. When the officer lights you up, in other words, when he turns on his vehicle's, his patrol car's lights and orders you to pull over, the officer is going to also mark down and note how long it took you to pull over and park your car. The officer is going to want to know, did you have trouble pulling over? Did you have trouble parking your car? Did you park in a really bad way? That's indication that you can't drive like a sober person can. Different types of things. After pulling you over, the officer is going to move on to the second stage of his DUI investigation. That is contact with the driver. The question here is, am I going to order this person to exit his vehicle? What the officer is going to do during this stage is going to ask you for your license, registration, and proof of insurance. He's also going to stick his head inside your vehicle and try to smell you and your car. He's not trying to track down and see if you have any type of bad odor. No, he wants to smell see if he can recognize any type of foreign substance such as alcohol, marijuana, or any other type of drug that could possibly impair your ability to drive safely. When he asks you for license, registration, and proof of insurance, he's also going to try to see if there's anything funny. In other words, are you responsive to his commands? So if he asks you for your driver's license, did you give him your driver's license, or did you give him a credit card or your gym membership? So he wants to see if you're responsive and how long it takes you to be responsive to his commands. Assuming he has enough reason to pull you or order you out of the car, then we move on to the third stage of this DUI investigation. Again, I do have another video that explains what you should be doing and saying to invoke your constitutional rights throughout these stages, okay? So check that out. Now, during the third stage, it's called the pre-arrest screening stage. Pre-arrest screening, what is that? That implies that you're going to be arrested, right? So it's not really much of a screening. And anyways, during this stage, the The big kahuna question is, am I going to arrest this person for a DUI? During this stage is when the officer is going to do the field sobriety test. Prior to doing the field sobriety test, he's going to ask you what's called pre-field sobriety test questions. These questions include, where are you going? Where are you coming from? How much did you drink? On a scale 0 to 10, how do you feel the effects of alcohol? What time did you start drinking? What time did you stop? Are you taking any medicine? Are you under the care of a doctor? Have you received any recent surgeries, any recent sports injuries or physical injuries? Have you bumped your head? Anything at all to see, well, one, to create what's called a drink pattern, and two, to create a case or build up a DUI case against you. After asking you these questions, the officer is going to move on to the next stage of the stage, and that is the field sobriety test. There are 3 standardized field sobriety tests. What does it mean when these tests are standardized? Well, NHTSA, the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration, that's a federal agency that has validated these tests. And the way they validated these tests is they spent millions and millions of dollars and years of studies and scientists and professionals, and they developed these 3 tests and statistics. And under these statistics, there's a certain amount of clues that show you are more likely than not, at least with a 0.08% of alcohol. That's the legal limit in California. So these 3 validated tests are the following: horizontal gaze nystagmus, the walk and turn, and the one-leg stand. There are other tests that are not validated by NHTSA and are sometimes used by the police. They are the modified Romberg and the finger-to-nose test. I'm not going to be talking about those tests during this episode because those are not validated. And another test that the police also use is the the preliminary alcohol screening device. That's a portable breath machine where they ask you to provide 2 breath samples so they can see how much alcohol is in your bloodstream. What these tests or this breath machine uses is not the air in your mouth, but instead is going to be testing the air inside your stomach, deep inside your stomach, and that's why they ask you to provide very, very deep breath samples, almost to the point that you're almost going to pass out. So let's talk about each of these standardized field sobriety tests. I sometimes have clients explaining to me that they believe they passed these tests. And to be honest, these tests are evaluated by the police officer, so they're supposed to be objective in deciding whether you showed these clues or not. But the person's a police officer, so it's hard for that person to be objective. It's likely that person's going to be subjective and say that you did not pass these tests and that you showed enough clues to justify arresting you for DUI. The horizontal gaze nystagmus test is where they check your eyes. During this test, they're going to have you stand still, put your hands to your side. If you're really tall and taller than the police officer, they're supposed to have you sit down on the curb. The reason is they're supposed to look down into your eyes and not look up. So during the horizontal gaze nystagmus, they want to look for what's called nystagmus. What is that? Nystagmus is the involuntary jerking of your eyeballs. Most people cannot control that. And there's a small population of people in the entire world that naturally have that without even consuming alcohol. Nystagmus, to put it in perspective, is like picture it's raining outside and you're driving your car and you put your windshield wipers. It does this smooth movement, right, from side to side. That is not nystagmus. Now, picture you're driving your car and you're going through the desert and it's really hot outside. And you've got some bugs on your window and you want to clean them off and you put your windshield wiper. Your windshield wiper may do this jerking movement instead of moving smoothly side to side. It kind of does this jerking movement. That's kind of what nystagmus looks like. Instead of moving from smooth side to side, it kind of does this jerking movement from side to side. During the horizontal gaze nystagmus, the officer is supposed to do 2 passes per eye for each clue. And there's 3 clues. So that means the officer is supposed to do a total of 12 passes, 6 passes per eye. The officer is looking for something called lack of smooth pursuit. That means that your eyeballs did not move smoothly from side to side. Instead, they do that involuntary jerking from side to side. The officer is also looking for nystagmus at the maximum deviation. That means when your eyeballs are at the max and can't look any further, they're still doing that jerking movement. And the officer is also looking to see at what point does your nystagmus start. Does it start at 45 degrees, at 30 degrees, at 60 degrees, etc. So they are validated clues in each of these validated tests. On the horizontal gaze nystagmus, there are 3 validated clues. Pursuant to the NHTSA studies, 4 out of 6 clues means there's an 88% chance that you are at least a 0.08% or more. The next test is the walk-in turn. The walk-in turn actually has 8 clues, 8 validated clues. This is a test where they're first going to ask you to stand still, put your hands to your side, and then they're going to ask you to put your right foot in front of your left foot, touching heel to toe. This is called the instructional phase. This is still part of the test when they're telling you the instructions. They want to see if you can maintain your balance during this stage. While you're maintaining this stance, the officer is going to ask or demonstrate to you how to do the test. And he's going to touch heel to toe, and he's going to explain to you how to do the turn. And the turn is where you put your left foot planted on the floor, and then using your right foot, you take a series of small steps to do a 180 turn, and then you continue by putting your right foot in front of your left foot, again touching heel to toe, and then you take 9 steps back. Complicated, right? Now, the officer is going to be able to do this probably pretty well. Why? Because the officer has had so much practice doing these tests. He's done so many DUI investigations, and during each of these DUI investigations, he's had to explain and demonstrate this test. So what's the saying? Practice makes perfect. So obviously the officer is able to do it. But if it's your first time doing it, even as a sober, no alcohol consumed person is not going to be able to do this test. And then if you put on the nerves, I mean, you are being watched by police officers. There's lights on. There's probably cars passing by. Nerves are going to kick in. And, I mean, you're going to have to perform under pressure. That's scary. So there's a lot of different variables why a person may not perform well. And NHTSA, I believe, failed to take that into consideration. And that is one of the many legal defenses in a DUI investigation. So, again, there are 8 validated clues, and under the NHTSA studies, 2 out of 8 of the validated clues means you failed this test. That means that there is a high likelihood that you are at least 0.08% blood alcohol concentration. Insane, right? 2 out of the 8. These include, for example, raising your arm 6 inches, missing heel to toe, stepping off the line, improper number of steps, improper turn, different things. The next test is called the one-leg stand. The one-leg stand is where you stand still, you put your hands to your side, and you're supposed to be asked. Some officers do it incorrectly and they order you which foot to raise. But you're asked to raise a foot, and the officer is going to demonstrate it for you, or at least they're supposed to. And you're supposed to raise your foot about 6 inches off the ground, keeping your foot parallel with the ground. Again, that's pretty hard. I mean, if you, one, are not in the healthiest and or maybe above your weight that you should be, well, that's going to factor in. If you had recent injuries, if you had played sports, for example, football, and have really bad knees, well, that's going to come into play. If it's really cold, that's going to come into play and being able to maintain your balance. While you raise your foot about 6 inches off the ground, you're supposed to keep your hand still to your side, and you're supposed to count 1001, 1002, 1003, and so on until the police officer tells you to stop. He's supposed to tell you to stop after 30 seconds. Here, unlike the walk and turn, there are 4 clues. Yeah. And if you show 2 of those 4 clues, you failed. Under NHTSA studies, if you show 2 out of the 4 clues, there is a high likelihood that you are at least a 0.08% blood alcohol concentration. I know, it's insane. So throughout this investigation, the officer is going to tell you, well, I want to see if you can follow my instructions. I want to see if you're okay to drive. No, they want to see if you failed or showed these clues to justify arresting you. After these 3 validated standardized field sobriety tests, the officer is going to ask you to provide 2 breath samples through the preliminary alcohol screening device. And then after that, he's probably going to arrest you. The officer is going to tell you before you provide this preliminary or these breath samples, he's going to say, well, look, you don't have to provide one, but if you are arrested, you're going to have to provide one. If you show below 0.08, I may let you go. If you show above a 0.08, etc. So they're going to tell you all these different things. Again, in my other episode, I explain what your constitutional rights are. And in summary, what you should be doing is not consenting to doing these field sobriety tests, including providing breath samples and not answering their questions, including the pre-field sobriety test questions, and when you're pulled over about your drinking pattern. You should be invoking your constitutional rights to remain silent. All right, guys. So that is how a DUI investigation is supposed to be conducted in California. If you guys have any other questions, you can also visit my website, www.jessearanalaw.com, or you can call my office at 562-392-8209. Be safe.